Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another How We Felt About. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me this time is Connor Nielsen. Good afternoon, Connor.
Good afternoon, Captain. How you doing?
I'm okay, man. Connor has joined me for another MCU review. Connor, it's the 31st MCU film, but it feels like the 45th after all the Disney Plus shows.
Yeah, I think we're at about that, right? I know we're over 40, because on Letterboxd, I have to open up like the new you have to click the button to make my MCU ranking longer, So I know their limit's 40, so we're in the heap of it. It's crazy how many Marvel stuff there is now.
Yeah, and it's also kind of amusing to me that, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and give you, my feelings on this movie too early, but it's kind of amusing to me that the end of the Ant-Man trilogy, as it were, Connor, feels like kind of just a prologue for the next big phase. It's like we had a whole trilogy that basically just sets up the next Avengers film.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I guess so.
But it was a movie, and we saw it, and we're going to talk about it for you a little bit. So we're going to do our regular sign flip. We'll tell you our best thing, our worst thing, our kind of immediate reaction impression walking out of the theater, and we'll do a little bit of non-spoiler talk for folks that haven't had a chance to see it yet, and then we can go into some spoilers, particularly if anybody has specific aspects of the movie that you want us to go into. Connor, I'm assuming you've only seen it the one time like I have, right?
Yep.
So very much first impressions. I have not had a lot of time for this to wash over me, and I haven't seen it again. And so I'm sure, as always, there will be some things I haven't thought of yet and stuff that I've missed. And this is one of those movies that is, not sticking with me the best, honestly. So I'm sure there's some bits that if we had seen it again, we'd be talking about. But maybe some folks can refresh my memory on some stuff. And feel free, as always, to leave a super chat in any dollar amount, which guarantees that we'll talk about your opinion or your questions about the movie, and leave regular comments as well. You can help us direct the conversation. And Connor, would you mind giving us just a real quick synopsis setup of Quantumania? I'm sure everybody knows what this movie is about, but give us a little bit beyond spoilers, or before we get to spoilers, I should say.
Okay, yeah. So picking up after the events of Avengers Endgame, Scott Lang has written a book and is kind of living the easy life, and everyone's back to being a big happy family. You have Scott Lang, Hope Van Dyne, who I guess he's married to, in a relationship with.
I think they're just together.
Her parents,
and
Dr.
apparently
Hank
we're
Pym.
supposed to maybe have a kid or kids, but all that got cut out of the movie. Did you hear about that?
No, what?
Yeah, there was a kid that was cast that was on set. I saw pictures of it today.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Austin told me about this, and I was looking at it, and we cannot tell if it was supposed to be her and Scott's kid, or if maybe she was with somebody while he was in the blip, or if it's another universe version of her. I don't know what that's about, but they were supposed to have a kid.
Didn't she get dusted? Because it's her and Hank and Janet on the other side of the thing, and then they all get dusted while he's done.
Yeah, that's true. She does get dusted. I forget. It's all coming back to me. Okay, so it's not that. The only thing Austin could figure, and he hasn't seen the movie yet, but Austin doesn't care about spoilers, so he already knows every single morsel. He remembers the movie better than me, and he hasn't even seen it. I almost invited him to the review, even though he hasn't seen the film. I'm joking. But his thought was maybe Kang shows her a future where she has kids. But I don't even know if he can do that. So anyway.
Yeah. So we got the Ant-Man fam, right? We got Michael Douglas as Hank Pym and Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet, and they're Hope's parents, and Scott's there, and they have Cassie, who's now played by a third actress, Catherine Newton, who's kind of a new.
Yeah, but I think she looks more like the original Cassie.
I will say visually it's perfect casting, because she and Catherine Newton and Paul Rudd have the same lower half of their face, where it's they have kind of a longer jaw. So anyways, things are all going fine.
Bone structure
Until,
casting.
yes, yeah. And basically what happens is one day they're all hanging out at their house, and Cassie is a super genius, and she says, "Hey, Dad, I want to show you what me and Grandpa, not biological grandpa, adopt, whatever. We built something in our basement." And they're like, "It's a quantum thing." And then Janet's like, "What?" And no, shut it down. And they all get sucked into the quantum realm, but like itty bitty quantum realm. It's even smaller and bigger than it was the last time we've been down there before. And there's like basically a whole Star Wars world down there, and they get separated, and they're all trying to find each other to get back home. But
Hey, it's also a Thor Ragnarok world.
Sure, yeah, yeah. Because there's a revolution that certainly ain't being televised. It's in the movie theaters, guys. And then you have the bad guy is Kang the Conqueror. Basically, there's some backstory with him and Janet when she was down there in the past. And anyways, they all got to find each other and get back home without getting killed by Kang. So that's what's going on in this movie. That's basically the setup. And anyways, yeah, Marvel Phase 5 is here, people.
Yep, here it comes. It's more multiverse. I will say before we get into thoughts, or ask you this question. First of all, did you watch Loki?
I did.
How necessary, because I've been getting this question from people, how necessary do you think seeing that show is to appreciating Kang and his motivations and what is happening with the whole multiversal saga with this? Because I thought they did a decent job of that not mattering really at all. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how you feel about it.
I feel like if you watched this and you see if you're going to the theater to watch this, you probably know that there is a Loki show on Disney Plus, if you have seen it or not. And if you watch this and you get to the second end credit scene, you might go, "Hey, I'm going to check out that Loki show." And then when you watch it, by the time you get to the end of it, you'll maybe know more about this Jonathan Majors character or one of his variations of him. So I think it's a good job. It does a good job of, if you've not seen it, you can go back to Loki to get more info on it, or you can just, having seen Loki, you can still watch this. It does a good job of kind of juggling that, chicken or egg kind of situation.
Yeah, I think it's justifying my criticism of the end of that show even more, that speech was too long and real unnecessary, but because I just don't think that you needed to see any of what happened at the end of that show in order to this is as decent of a setup, or better, I guess, for Kang as the end of that show was. The thing you wouldn't know, of course, is the idea that we've kind of retconned the previous non-existence of the multiverse. That, because the end of Loki is the multiverse didn't exist, and then now it does and has from the beginning of time, but wasn't before. So, time itself has been rewritten. You wouldn't have that. Now it would just look like you always had the multiverse, but general audiences are not going to know or care about that whole aspect of it. Connor, how'd you feel about this movie? You look stoked to talk about this, by the way.
Cap, how long have we known each other? How long have we been doing this? We gotta meet under better circumstances.
A lot of years. We have some exciting looking movies next month. And we might get to review something we're actually chomping at the bit to talk about. Because you notice, I've been drinking my coffee. I got my energy high. I'm trying to make this as entertaining as possible because I have nothing to say about this movie.
I like talking movies. I like talking movies with you. I feel like I come across, if people who just know me from this channel, they might say, "Why
do you
is
hate
Sky
everything?
Even here?
Why do you even bother with movies?"
Yeah, why do you even show up, man? It's did you used to like movies and you just are still friends with Captain Logan? What's the deal, And so I don't know, I did not like this. I would call it a bad movie. I think if it weren't for Spider-Man No Way Home, this would probably be the worst Marvel movie. I guess I liked it a little bit more than Loki because it's shorter. I don't know. I did not dig it, as it were. If I had to do a best thing, I guess I'm going to maybe go against the grain a little bit on this. And I'm not going to say Kang. I think Peyton Reed is really, really lucky that Edgar Wright cast Paul Rudd in this role all those years ago.
That is the best backhanded compliment I've heard in a long time, because I really thought you were actually going to polish Peyton Reed's helmet in some way, and you were like, the best thing is that Peyton Reed got casting from someone else that works.
Yeah. It's like there are like, so the the Ant-Man movies are more historically they've been more comedic than other of the Marvel movies. They've been kind of lighter, breezier, more comedic films. And now I think most of the Marvel movies are kind of Ant-Man-esque in tone. And this movie I just straight up did not find very funny at all. But when I did chuckle or I did laugh, it's been it's largely because of Paul Rudd. Like there's a line where they talk about camping, and it's not a really funny joke, but the way Paul Rudd delivers it, or when he has to silently count holes, like that whole bit was not funny to me. But the way Paul Rudd is just physically timing himself, the way he delivers lines, that is one charming, likable guy. So good on Paul Rudd for being the lead of this movie. I feel like I would actively like this movie less if he was not there. And as far as the worst thing, we got two different things that are kind of up to bat. You are the writer between the two of us, so I'm gonna not say the dialogue.
Hey, you're a decent writer in and of yourself, man. So don't sell yourself short. Connor's in my writing workshop. We're doing a movie that he's writing that's a vampire thing that's awesome. But anyway, so no, Connor's a good writer. Don't say that.
Well, that means a lot coming from you. I really appreciate that. But like my brother, when he watched this, put it best into words, where he said, like, production design is important. And this movie, I don't understand. Like, I think the problem here is Peyton Reed struggles here, because I think he's really trying to get ambitious here. And his ability as a filmmaker is tested, and I think it kind of confirms what I feel like I already knew, which is he's kind of a second-rate filmmaker. And that sounds really harsh from a guy who's literally made nothing. I get that. But compared to the likes of, like an Edgar Wright, who was supposed to make one of these, remember that? Or even like a James Gunn or whatever, like just stuff like production design. Like there's no unifying vision to the way the quantum realm works. And I've had a problem with the production design going back to Loki, where it's like you have a void at the end of time, and then you see time as a big circle. So where's the void at the end of time, visually speaking? It's like things like that. And that is just taken to the nines with this movie, where it's like all of the beings in the quantum realm don't look like they fit together. It's so ugly. And not even just like the usual.
Yeah, I kept assuming they all got sucked in from other realities or something, and that never comes up. I guess they're all indigenous to there, and human beings are there somehow. Do you notice all the things, by the way, real quick, in the movie that are where there's like questions about them that are never answered? Where it's like, isn't it kind of weird that there's human beings here? Yeah, like with Bill Murray. It was like, I mean, I guess Bill I'm Murray human, but I'm not from Earth. Okay, moving right along. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that.
Why do you think this looks so different from last time we were here? That's really weird, right?
Well, because it's smaller than it was before. But how did Janet get back up to those places where she could possess Scott? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. How far down do you have to go in the quantum realm before you can just grow yourself out like you did in the first movie? What is that about? So now you can get small and giant relative to the quantum realm, but not giant enough to leave.
Yeah, I know. Quick thing. Plushie SDX says the void is in the middle of the circle. No, that's where Kang's castle was. All right, it's New York, and it's like rubble. That's the void at the end of time, right? Anyway, sorry.
Can somebody draw me a map?
Right. Also, where's the TVA map? Anyways, but sorry. Then what we have is I don't like the Loki show, but when it comes to like the pinnacle of where the production design completely falls apart, it's MODOK. Good God. Like, I'm just gonna like not pay attention to what the script is doing with MODOK and just visually, what the hell is this thing, guys? Like, it looks like a 2K like scan of somebody's head that has been rendered in 4K and in large. It looks degraded. It looks awful. Like, it looks unfinished. How did this get past? Like,
somehow it's supposed to just be stylistic, but it's really hard to look at. It doesn't fit with anything else you're seeing on the screen. It's somebody, was it one of the super chats? I forget. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and read this one. Great and Powerful Dodd. Why did they $4.99 super chat? Thank you. Why did they hire the designers of Thumb Wars for MODOK? And you know what I couldn't stop thinking of looking at that? He looks like the annoying orange.
Yeah, it's one of those Steve Odekirk creations. You know what? If Steve Odekirk was MODOK, that would be so much better, right? Like, honestly, Jack Black should have been MODOK.
Think of 150 other things. Anybody but Patton Oswalt!
Yes.
Anybody! Because, hey, I'm sick of Patton Oswalt in everything, and I watched 2 episodes of that show and wished I hadn't.
I remember the last time I visited you, that was like when MODOK had come out. And you're like, yeah, I just watched some MODOK. It was really bad. I'm like, that's a thing? And you're like, yeah, it's on Hulu.
Yeah, it got canceled very quickly.
Anyways, those are my best thing, worst thing. Overall, did not dig it, but we can get into why. Cap, what did you think of Ant-Man and the Wasp?
So he's flipping red. I don't know if he actually brought a physical sign, but he's flipping red.
Yeah, it's red. Fourth World Omnibus is red. Yeah, there we go. Red. Did not feel it.
I'm going to echo a bunch of what Connor just said, but maybe a little bit less intensely. Maybe not with a magnifying glass put quite as hard on my feelings. I was nonplussed by this movie before anything. It just kind of felt like, oh, we gotta go to one of these again. It was real obligatory to me, and like I said, it feels like a prologue. And a lot of people complained, like a lot of the reviews when this came out, just because I saw it Friday, and a lot of the early reviews were, okay, strap in, folks, because now we're at the start of another huge, string of movies for the MCU, and the only point of this is to kind of get the ball rolling on all of that. And it is absolutely that, but was also a lot more of an Ant-Man movie than I expected it to be. It is, like, to its credit, it does make it feel a lot more like the end of a trilogy than I thought it would be, and than a lot of these have been, for better or worse, and whether you like these movies or you don't, and whether you think that that's the right place to introduce your kind of new Thanos, because I think the biggest misstep here, as far as business-wise, is just is in marketing, is in looking at the way they handled Thanos and trying to recreate that again for the public. This is not the place to do that, especially the way people are responding to this movie, Connor, because I think unless the trailers just like really turn people around, and they might, because Marvel has been good at that in the past with big event movies. But my worry now is that, for them anyway, is that we're gonna get to Kang Dynasty, and general audience goers are gonna go, oh really? That villain from that Ant-Man movie? Okay. Like, it doesn't feel like the point of it is to get the ball rolling for this next big status quo, but I think a lot of people are going to walk out going, I mean, I guess that villain was sort of interesting, but he got beaten by Ant-Man. And so they're going to have a hard time getting excited about him in the future. And yes, it's variants, and yes, the next Kang is not necessarily going to be the Kang from this movie. Minor spoilers with that. We already were dealing with the variant idea in Loki. I don't know if that's going to surprise anybody. And I guess I'm also spoiling that Kang does get beaten in this movie, which was not necessarily a given, and I think also one of the big missteps with it is that it would have been a lot more thrilling and surprising if Ant-Man was allowed to lose with this movie. That's one of my big disappointments with it, actually, is the ending, because I think it's a big... and my apologies for spoilers already, but I think it's, I don't know, it's a letdown to me, because I think it's kind of a cop-out ending. It really wants to, it desperately wants to go in the more interesting kind of gutsy direction, and is not allowed to do that. And apparently there were reshoots, and maybe it was supposed to do what I thought it was going to do, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I felt this sort of, because there is a desire to be more dramatic with this installment, but then there's the push to be more dramatic, but then there's the pull of, well, it's an Ant-Man movie, and so it's trying to retain that kind of more inconsequential, slight but breezy, fun sitcom style that especially the previous one was.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I feel like that kind of undercut. I know, like, a lot of people have said this for years, but there's the humor undercuts the drama in these Marvel movies. This one, it felt more of like a tonal, like, comedy was like of the previous Ant-Man movies, is trying to play tug of war with the more dramatic, newer stuff, and that's undercutting what I'm supposed to even take away from the movie. Like, how significant does this ultimately feel by the end? Not really.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I don't think, because I'm hearing a lot of people saying it's tonally inconsistent. I think you're right about the tug of war, but I think it's. And I did not love this movie, but I think it's actually doing a much better job, and maybe my standards are low because of the comparisons I can't help but make to Ragnarok and Love and Thunder, because this reminded me more of those than anything, and at least we actually wrote dialogue for characters, and so you've got places where it does start to get real heavy with Kang, and I think it's playing at a juxtaposition of, like you said, the slight kind of whimsical Ant-Man thing with the humor that's intentionally undercutting the drama, and the much heavier, Kang is this massive force to be reckoned with, and thinks he is doing the right thing by axing whole universes and timelines for what he thinks is the greater good. Those two things could be really interesting to put together, and if only it took the chances it should have in the third act, I think it could have nailed that. I think the biggest issue is that it doesn't take the big chance at the end. And also, some of that humor, as you said, just isn't funny and is trying too hard. But the fact that it's keeping with that humorous tone and doing much heavier dramatic stuff than it did in the previous two movies, I think actually is I actually put that in the plus column with this, because I think it's kind of neat, just conceptually, just on paper, that you'd have your first two movies, which are much, much smaller for obvious reasons. It's a B-list superhero, and he gets small, and he's hanging out with ants. That's the one thing I really loved about the first movie, was that idea of perspective and making a small movie that is made like a big movie. This is trying to say the most important things in the universe right now are happening on a microscopic level, and ramping up to that, but still keeping with the thematic, the theme of, like, smallness and the little guy and all of that, while these huge major things are happening in a universe that is underneath ours and tiny and nobody can see it. On paper, that's great. And I didn't think it was going to feel like an Ant-Man movie. I was surprised by those reviews. That's why I brought that up, because before this came out and I saw that, my assumption was that they were doing the Thor Ragnarok thing, where people didn't really care for that last movie, so they were going to try to make this we'd have this huge tonal whiplash thing, and it would be like a 180, and suddenly it would be supremely serious, but with the Ant-Man character, and Paul Rudd would just not be allowed to crack as many jokes or whatever, and a bunch of really important things would happen here, and it would be a really weird place to do it because it's Ant-Man. And that's really not what happens. This movie is oddly kind of inconsequential at the end of the day.
Yes. I guess I'll echo you. I was surprised by how much more of an Ant-Man movie this was than because I had heard similar things. It's like when you look at the trailer, you look at the poster, in the trailer, Ant-Man and the Wasp is like the letters are there, but they're not even illuminated. But Quantumania is all lit up. You
Yeah,
look
they
at the
try to sell it like
poster.
an event movie.
Yeah, you look at the poster, Ant-Man and the Wasp is like that big, but Quantumania is the big letters. And so, yeah, but no, I agree with you there. Sorry, but my guess, let's kind of go into that business what
Well,
you're talking about in terms. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, just real quick before we do that, because I'm sorry, I'm just long-winded all the time. But real briefly, I'll just throw out best thing, worst thing. Best thing for me is Michelle Pfeiffer. We finally gave her stuff to do and legitimized her casting because it could have been anybody before. And she's got a little bit of pathos in this. The writing is not great, but she's elevating it, I think, just as much as what you said with Scott Lang, with what's his face, Paul Rudd, and my least favorite thing is absolutely MODOK, and not just what he looks like, but the baffling choice at the end of the film with that, which we'll talk about, not remotely earned, and I was slinking in my chair, I was about to get into like the sticky popcorn on the floor. I couldn't deal with it. Some of just MCU writing at large right now is inching ever more toward the mid to latter days of the Arrowverse, and we need to be really careful about that because this was way beneath them in the first couple of phases. You would have never seen anything like that, and well, I'll put a tack in this because we're not into spoilers quite yet, but just I want to make sure that we talk about this later. But Connor, you know how you know how a normal person gets up in the morning? No, you know how people right now and for the last few years have been really on about representation in films.
Mm-hmm.
Can we and I mean of course like racial and sexual representation. Can we not think about it like that with characters? Can we stop just representing characters
Like,
in superhero movies? How are we still doing this? How 31 films into a huge sprawling ongoing continuity are we still going, well, people have heard of MODOK, right? We'll just put in a character that kind of looks like that, isn't really that character at all, and then never have him again. Why are we still doing this with superhero movies? It goes all the way back to... I had a question on a show a couple weeks ago, I think it was a Captain Logan show, where somebody asked me, why did movies like Batman 89 and this first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie kill off villains, like major villains, that you'd want to see maybe in future installments? And we went over that, and I talked about all the reasons I thought maybe they were doing that, and then I stopped for a second, I went, we're still doing that! Why are we still doing that?
that's true. So,
and I'm not a giant MODOK fan or anything, but like, there's 5 people in the world that care about that, and it's not fair to those people. And also, it was just hard to look at.
Yeah, I was looking at MODOK, and I can hear the.
I didn't hate it, but I'm not feeling it, certainly. We'll get to super chats here in just a little bit, guys, but sorry, go ahead, Connor.
Well, just regarding MODOK, I can understand where some people might say, hey, they're just doing it right off the page. MODOK is a big head. Hey, you know, what do you want? And I'd say, sure. But we're talking about the studio that did Loki with the horn helmet, that did Mysterio right off the page, that did like just one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. And I think the reason why I don't like MODOK is because they didn't go off the page enough, and the production design sucks. So it's just sort of like the problems visually, I think, with this movie all kind of wrapped up into one. And then also I got just script problems with this, just like crazy.
Up the
But
wazoo, yeah. Well, let's just go ahead and put up the spoiler warning right now, because I want to piggyback off of that and say the bigger issue for me with that. So spoilers now, and folks, feel free to ask about spoilers in the comments. And if you've not seen the movie and you don't want it spoiled, leave now and come back and finish this later, because folks will start spoiling things in the comments if they haven't already, and I am inviting them to do that. So. Connor, for me, it wasn't just the visual, although it's so silly to me that MODOK has like a visor that looks sort of like the MODOK face in the comics, not just to represent, again, see, representation, but with nothing interesting behind it, right? Just no, see, it's there. That's the forced representation thing. I don't like that. It's irritating. It's not like Galactus is a cloud bad, but it's just, well, if you guys didn't have a take on it, or you didn't want to take it off the page like you said, then just don't bother with it. Save it until somebody wants to do it. Why are we wasting it here? But he's got a visor that looks like sort of the comic book MODOK face, not just to represent that, but so that we can have a big reveal about who it really is. Mm-hmm. There's no reason he would have that. Why would Kang want to make sure he can protect his face that much?
He shows
and he never wears it.
Visor. He shows up with a visor for 4 seconds before we can have the dramatic reveal.
Yeah.
It's like you could have just had like
turn around. Just have him turn around.
Yeah, or like you just have like an electrical like earbud. Someone's like, I'm getting a wavelength. It's a voice. It's dun 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 dun. Then MODOK shows up or something, right?
Yeah.
It's like why give him the visor? But yeah, so you had talked a bit earlier about like, you know, looking out for the little guy and like, you know, kind of the story, like kind of the character arc that, you know, we have with Cassie and Scott. He's like, Cassie is kind of like a little bit of a, you know, teen activist, super genius type person. And she's like, come on, Dad, you used to save the world and now you don't do nothing. You basically just wrote a book and that's it. What I have an issue with is like the first 15 minutes feel like a different Scott than the rest of the hour and 45 minutes. Because early on, it feels like Scott's a little absent-minded. He's not focusing on the world around him. And then when you get down, Cassie's like, come on, Dad, you're not a hero anymore. And it's like, well, he never says this, but what he needs to say is he's like, no, I am looking out for the little guy. The little guy is you. You're my kid. I'm a dad. This is like my job. Like that's what I am doing. I have to save you because you are my child. You are a little person to me, you know? And that never comes up. But if you look at the first 15 minutes, it's like, he does seem to be involved in her life. He's just like, no one tells him about anything that's going on. So he comes across as a little bit of like an absentee parent, kind of like a loser, but it's apparently not what he is. I don't know. It's a very strange dynamic.
No, I didn't consider that issue, but I think you're right about it. And if the script was a little smarter, Scott should maybe even be offended when people at the beginning are telling him that he's not ambitious enough and not doing anything with his life. And he should say, well, it's not just about the book signings. I'm trying to take care of my daughter. You notice that she's taking after me too much and winding up in jail and stuff? Mm-hmm. And like I'm trying to look after her, but like I can't fully control her. And I was, I was the one that inspired her to do this. And I don't think that that was one of my big issues, Connor, is that I don't think it explores enough how he feels about his inspiring her to do the kind of crusading, what's the thing I'm looking for?
Like activist type?
Yeah, because she's basically doing what he was doing, the Robin Hood thing. She's basically doing what he was doing.
Yeah, no, totally.
I mean, it's more activism and less theft.
Mm-hmm. But it's still like you can kind of see how she takes after him in a slightly different way. But she's also taking after Hank Pym, and
yeah.
I guess my issue here is with Cassie is that like I don't get enough of a read on her beyond a lot of the adults in her life sort of want to influence her. They kind of project a little bit on, and she's kind of like a sponge and taking it all in. And I'm not seeing enough of a character responding to those influences. But at the same time, the first 15 minutes kind of establish this cast as a sitcom cast. Similarly to how in Spider-Man No Way Home, Ned was like, hey guys, remember me? I'm Ned, the guy in the chair. Guy in the chair, guy in the chair. Guy, chair, chair, chair. Do you guys remember me? I'm the guy in the chair. Similarly, Dr. Hank Pym is like, ants. Remember ants? Ants. I'm the ant guy. Ants. And it's like, what? Yeah. And then when you get down
and he seems completely out of character through most of this movie.
He does. And when you get down to the quantum realm, it's like
he's something of a of a parody of himself now, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like what's going on, where it's like you have these like supporting casts where it's like you have signed these actors on, you kind of have to just bring them over, and it's like you're having less and less for them to do, so you just sort of Flanderize them. And I feel like that's happened a lot to Pym a lot, and Hope, because she's not really much of anything in the first movie beyond just kind of upset that her dad doesn't pay attention to her, and now it's like she doesn't really do much of anything beyond, connect with her mom, which is a very minor subplot.
Yeah, you're getting at all kinds of different things I want to talk about.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
But with the Pym thing, it's almost like we have a structure or a setup that we always have to follow with these, where we have to make sure that that Hank and now Janet get enough screen time. Now, Janet has certainly more of a reason for being here, and I would even argue that the Wasp in the title now is her before it is Hope, because Hope doesn't do hardly anything until the very, very end. And the one thing that we have for Hope to do, which is to go in and, again, we're in spoiler territory, to go in and rescue Scott at the end, is, I think, the biggest missed opportunity and the biggest misstep in the movie, because I think they should have been trapped there, and apparently the original plan was to trap them there, and I think it just watches real uninspired and routine and milquetoast to not actually let that happen at the end. And I think it would help Kang seem like a lot more of a threat, where we already have casualties of this war that hasn't even started yet, and we could maybe wait a few movies and wonder what has even happened to them down there, and maybe make it a little bit more ominous and uncertain as to what happens to Kang at the end of the movie. But yeah, it just seems like those characters have to be there and have enough screen time, because hardly any of these Marvel movies anymore are allowed to be, and like DC has had this problem too, we've talked about this a million times, have been allowed to be singular character pieces. They've got to be ensemble cast movies, but it's still really just Scott Lang's movie. So why don't you just let it be that? Like, did Hank even need to be here? Couldn't we have just left him home? I guess somebody's got to put his hands in the Jell-O and drive the ship. Like,
I mean, it could have been Hope. She just kind of sits there while her parents do the work.
Yeah, well, and it's so weird to me, because I felt like this with the second movie too, but comparatively, she gets more to do in that movie, and I thought she was kind of wasted. I feel bad for Evangeline Lilly, who's an actress I like. It seemed like we wanted to make a big deal out of we're being a little bit more progressive, and the women in our movies are mattering more, and so now it's Ant-Man and the Wasp before we even have a singular, female superhero movie, which we don't do until Black Widow, which seemingly no one cared about.
Captain Marvel.
I'm sorry, Captain Marvel.
But it still predates that, though.
Yeah, it predates that. But no, you're right. I guess. See, I always forget about Captain Marvel because that movie's not very good, and it seems like a lot of people have forgotten about that. I don't care how much money it made at the box office. Okay, if it's not right before Endgame, that doesn't happen. But anyway, we'll just see how the Marvels does at the end of this year. We'll just see, and it just got pushed back to November.
That's right.
In case you don't know, I'm not mentioning that for any reason except to say that's news that just came out. But anyway, what was I talking about? So, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then she doesn't get all that much to do in that, and now it's still Ant-Man and the Wasp, and she gets even less to do. But, Janet's got a little bit more. Also, this feels a lot more like what that second movie should have been. I hated having to wait that whole movie to get to what I thought the and I said this when we reviewed that, but what I thought the premise of that whole movie should have been, and what I kind of expected it to be at the end of Ant-Man, which was, Scott Lang at the end of the first Ant-Man winds up in the quantum realm, doesn't find her and bring her back like I thought would happen. So if you're going to do that at the beginning of your second movie, and especially if you're going to cast a wonderful actress, why not like a real classic beloved actress who almost didn't even take the job? Why wouldn't you make that your first act plot point and give her stuff to do? So this is kind of the movie that should have been. And I will say, with a lot of missteps and things I didn't care for with this movie, I enjoyed it more than that because it wasn't wholly boring. It's a little boring in places just because of how formulaic it is, but it's not boring in the way Ant-Man and the Wasp is.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember most of Ant-Man and the Wasp. I saw it one time.
That's because there wasn't anything for you to remember.
Exactly.
And they wasted Lawrence Fishburne, which should be a, burn at the stake kind of crime.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. It's like, I remember from what I can try to remember about that movie, I remember thinking, like, well, Lawrence Fishburne's only here so that we can have him in these Marvel movies. And he's not even in the sequel to that movie. He's been in nothing since then. So, but, I forgot what I was going to say. Never mind. But you had other stuff you wanted to say.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was trying to give you the floor.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess another issue I have is that a lot of these characters feel like they're Flanderized, but they all kind of feel not indistinct from one another. They have their own thing, even though it's a pretty, archetypal one-note thing. Like I said, Hank's the ants guy, and so
yeah, that's what I was gonna say based on you're saying that earlier about who was it? Janet or not Janet? I forget what character you were talking. Oh, sorry, about his daughter, Cassie. Because that's the trouble you run into sometimes when you have a character that is mostly there to be a plot device. They're trying really hard to give her a character arc and a motivation, but I don't really know at the end of the day what she's supposed to take from the mistakes she makes in this movie. It's working backwards from a conclusion, it feels like, where she has to make a mistake that gets them trapped in the quantum realm, but she ultimately can't really learn anything from that, because the thing that's supposed to be endearing about her is that she leaps before she looks and tries to help people without scanning the situation first. How do you make that mistake feel really bad about getting your parents and everybody sucked into the quantum realm, and then I realize her actual mom's not there for anybody that's thinking about that. But how do you do that and then immediately go, oh, Dad, we have to help these people we just met that we don't know anything about, and damn the consequences. Really? And then I don't know that she learns anything from that. So you have that whole speech at the beginning from the book where Scott says, you have to let yourself make mistakes. And I like this potentially, again, on paper as a moral of the story. You have to allow yourself to make mistakes, and that's how we grow. Who actually grows in this movie?
Well, physically, Scott and Cassie do.
And they shrink too.
Whoa. Yeah. Talk about regression. Am I right? So, no, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. But you're right. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. What was I on about? Something. Oh yeah. So I think it's weird that Janet has like PTSD. Like, she is like, I don't want to talk about what happened in the quantum realm, and just will not say anything. It's like, it's painful, and it's like, wow, what did she do? And it turns out she helped a guy build a spaceship. And she's like, if I'd only known. And it's like, but wait, hold on. Like, how are you in your 70s and that's your response to that? It's like, you didn't know any better. You didn't know any better. And once you did know better, you did something to stop him. He's not killing everybody right now. Like, what? Like, if you're a teenage girl, then yeah, like, I would understand why you'd be like upset and distressed about it. But like, you're in your 70s. You fought in wars and stuff. Like, huh? And a lot of the characterizations felt like they like a lot of the adults here, people in their 40s, people in their 70s, they felt indistinguishable to the teenage girl to me in terms of like the way they look at conflict, the way they address conflict, the way like they kind of go along with everything. It felt like a sitcom, and that's, I think, a problem I've kind of had with the last Ant-Man movies, primarily the second one, what I can remember of it. And I think that's contributing to what I was saying earlier, where the more light, fluffy stuff kind of conflicts, just like I think thematically, in with the more dramatic stuff, because that those themes could be strong, but it's the package it's delivered in that I think undermines it to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think the ideas you're talking about are just kind of played lip service to, and no disrespect to anybody, because we've seen directors and writers, people like the Rousseaus that came from exclusively a comedy background who do drama very, very well. But this is written by one of the Rick and Morty writers who hasn't done much else except for television comedy, and particularly cartoon stuff, and I think that really shows. And he wrote the script by himself.
Interesting. I did not know that. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's Jeff Loveness. And he's writing Kane Dynasty.
Oh, and I thought that was a comic book writer.
I think he's also a comic book writer. Now that you say that.
Okay. Oh no, that's Loveless. Sorry, my bad.
No, but he's yeah, it's a different guy than what you're thinking of. But apparently, he's also written some comics. Now that I'm looking at his Wikipedia page, not a ton, but he wrote the first 6 issues of Groot and the first 7 issues of recent Nova. So he's been doing some recent stuff, and yeah, but that's about it.
Yeah, interesting.
Let's go ahead and get to some of these super chats real quick.
Sounds like a good...
To not shaft anybody, because we're already almost at an hour, and I don't know how we do that. Tom, $2 super chat. I really liked this. It felt like Gardens Redux. I think he means Guardians. But yeah, I mean, it's yet another movie that is taking a lot of its cues from Guardians. And yes, the Ant-Man movies were already comedies, so I don't mean in that, oh, Guardians was a comedy, so now we gotta, degenerate this into comedy. I mean in all of the alien stuff. It's taking a lot of its cues from, just like Ragnarok did, from some of what Gunn was doing. Now, having said that, I thought that there were some actually really creative visual designs at first, and I just lost interest in them very quickly. Like, when we're first introduced to the quantum realm, I thought there were some really cool, weird, out there creatures and landscapes and things, and I was kind of digging on it, and I got half an hour into the movie, and maybe the ending was more disappointing to me because of this, and I was like, I don't really know what anybody's talking about. Like, this seems kind of neat, and some people were trying real hard in the design department. And then, I don't know, after a while, the novelty of that really wore off. And I don't know if it was just because the writing isn't great and it even kind of falls apart.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of goes back to, like, there isn't this sort of unifying vision to what it is. It does sort of feel a little kitchen sink. And I think that
could be cool if there was more of an explanation for it. Because, like I said, it really felt like we were going to get... And I'm not saying that it's bad because it didn't do what I wanted it to, but it didn't do anything with this. What's going on? I thought we were going to get a revelation that nobody is from the quantum realm, or at least not very many people, that they were all brought here from somewhere, like Kang came here. We're never told that. So you're right. It feels like there should be something unifying, but it wouldn't have to. There could be a really good reason for the kitchen sink approach.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like the Thor Ragnarok, like Sakaar, like it's just like a junk planet where things just get dumped, Yeah. And I guess in that way, this does feel more like a Ragnarok Redux than like a Guardians Redux, because like Guardians is more about like found family, and this is more about like revolution, I guess. But I guess one thing, big thematically speaking, so like, like a movie, right? This actually goes back to one of like my favorite Eric in his old YouTube channel moments, where he's talking about Dark Knight Rises, and he says like, it's like in these movies, It's like there's like the kind of the thematic exchange between the Batman and the villain, right? And in Dark Knight Rises, it's you came here to die with your city. No, I came to stop you. And it's like, what?
Good job, Goyer. I don't care that your name's not on the movie. We all know you wrote that line.
Hey, maybe that's why he has a story credit. He came up with that one.
No, I'm here to stop you. It's kids playing with action figures.
Yeah. So, in the case of this movie, though, like you have this part where, like, okay, I get it. Like,
you got to give them that they delivered that with a straight face, though.
Dude, it's dorky, but I love it. So, in this movie, like, I get it. Like, Kang has Cassie, and Scott doesn't like that, right? He's the bad guy, but he shows up, and it's like weirdly tonally kind of at odds, where it's like okay, now we're in the climax, and he's like really intense, and he's big, and he's like, Kang, we had a deal. Our word is our bond. Without it, we're nothing. And I'm like, where is this coming from?
Who is this character?
Yeah, like thematically, like this movie is nothing about like words being your bond and like lying. Or I guess there's a little bit I guess so.
I don't know.
But I'm getting it a little mixed up because last night I was at a friend's house and they were watching like Catching Fire, which also has like a lot of like themes about like lying and stuff. So I'm legitimately getting it mixed up with that movie. So
yeah, but like it's not just where does the platitude come from, but also where does that conviction come from? Now, look, I get that he doesn't like this villain took his daughter, and he's going to be angry about that. We have seen Scott Lang angry before. We haven't seen him angry like that. It's like he gets mad, and then he starts taking like Thor dialogue or like I don't know. So
Captain
America dialogue. It can't, maybe more so. Yeah. It's or even like Black Panther dialogue. I could see Black Panther delivering that. Like without it, we are nothing. Like yeah, that's more of a T'Challa kind of line, right? I don't see in any situation. He doesn't have to be joking all the time just because he's Scott Lang. Our word is our bond. Without it, we are nothing. Would you get that out of a Cracker Jack box?
Yeah,
that's not how you talk. You got to keep it in character. And yeah, that's such a perfect example of what you were talking about earlier, Connor, where it's just not character driven. But it's trying really hard to make you think it is. It really wants to give that character some pathos, and that would be wonderful. And I love the idea of getting Scott Lang to its lowest point, and getting him to a place where he has to sacrifice himself to let his daughter go back. And the big thing that I just feel like the big lesson at the end of this should have been, yeah, you got to take risks, but it's also a good idea to sometimes look before you leap, and that, there should be bigger consequences. Maybe in the long run there will be, because the big ominous thing at the end of this is supposed to be, well, Kang said he was the only person that could stop the army of Kangs that are coming, the Kang dynasty. Okay. All right. But the problem is, so the idea is supposed to be the big consequence to everything that happened here might be we could have stopped that war, maybe even before it starts, but we got rid of the one guy who claimed he could stop it. But the problem is that guy got beaten by Ant-Man.
Yes.
So I don't even believe him when he says, "Well, you need me, universe." To make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, I was disappointed because it's like when you get to the ending, I was kind of out of it by the point where he's fist fighting. But having him stranded in the quantum realm, like there is maybe something there to. We basically led a revolution. We stopped the bad guy. Now we're stuck here.
Yeah.
Are they going to become leaders of a new thing down there? Are they going to be like seen as the bad guys who are now conquerors? Like, what's the deal? And
you could get him to a really interesting character place with that.
And if we're talking about dynasties, you know, these are legacy characters. These are not the first Ant-Man and Wasp characters.
Yeah.
Wow, my voice is really going, guys. I'm sorry.
That's a great point, though. Yeah. Sorry about your voice.
No, that's fine. It's fine. But yeah, I don't know. Like it does, but then it just kind of presses like literally an easy button in the movie, and they open up a door and they're like, okay, deuces.
Yeah. Why does it do that? That is not where this was going. That is clearly not where this was going. And is
but
it
I
just
also feel like that's just the ending of like the movie. Like the last climax, it feels a little like thematically removed from the rest of the movie too.
Yeah.
But also I got a bone to pick with the dialogue in this movie. Like I kept noticing it was like there's this dialogue exchange like way of doing things where it's like I am a bad person. I'm so sorry, Mom, that you had to go through that. But you're not alone anymore. And they look up. And it's like, okay, person is sad. Reinforcement that, yes, it is sad. But then third beat, hope. And it's like this way that the characters, like, it's like several scenes in a row, I felt like we kept hitting that same thing where it's like, Ant-Man, you got to help me. No, I'm going to hurt your daughter. Please, because please is just the word that people use when it's like someone has leverage over them. Please what? Please let us go. Please release my daughter. Please what? Please.
I forgot about that. That was
I'm gonna hurt you, Ant-Man. Please do it, Ant-Man. Please. And then they flip her sideways, and he's like, "Okay, I'll do it." It's like that one guy
you're right.
from.
I kind of checked out during that scene a little bit because you know, almost like you get like a mental fetal position, and then you forget that dialogue even happened because you just can't even deal with it. Where it's like, and so then you're critiquing it later, and then it doesn't even come back to you until somebody reminds you, like Connor, that happened, and then I'm going, oh yeah, that's right. I was excising that from my mind. I forgot all about that. Hey, I have a question for you. Why does this was irking me in the movie? I feel like unless I'm missing something, this is a movie that should be over in the middle of the second act, maybe, because I don't really understand why Kang reneges on the initial deal with Ant-Man in the first place. Why does he hold on to his daughter?
I don't know.
I don't get that. He doesn't need her for anything anymore. He doesn't need Ant-Man for anything. All he wanted was the device, was the MacGuffin, so that he can get out of the quantum realm. That's his whole thing. Which feels also like a villain plot I've seen a million times, where you have an all powerful villain that's stuck somewhere that's trying to get somebody to let them out and through leverage of some kind. And it
also feels like the kind of heel turn that he should be doing to Janet, because he promised her something, and then Janet wasn't even there to see him, like, I have altered the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further. And
yeah, well, is the idea supposed to be that somehow he's trying to get revenge on Janet by hanging on to Cassie, who's not even her daughter? Like, I didn't understand why, and it kind of comes off like just this arrogant, well, I'm king of the universe, I'm the conqueror, I'm better than all of you. I like how condescending he is to everybody around him, and that bit where he's like, MODOK, don't speak when I come into a room. And fair enough, I would say that to MODOK too. Then later he just lets him talk, and I thought that was weird. But yeah, he's like, you do not speak when I enter a room. And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of digging on this guy. I don't know why he shouldn't have made MODOK, because MODOK's terrible. But and don't worry, guys, we will talk more about the MODOK thing. But I don't know why he hangs on to Cassie. All he has to do is take the thing from Scott that he gets Scott to begrudgingly go get. In a kind of awful scene with a whole bunch of Scott Langs and just the one that still works at the ice cream place. I don't even understand that. How did that variant get there?
You are touching on something about these Ant-Man movies that has bothered me forever. Now, I grant you this, like, this is just a me thing.
Are you gonna complain about product placement?
No. Although I should.
Is it a Baskin-Robbins issue? Doesn't a lot of this feel like, look, we're bookending, we're making it a true trilogy because we remembered Baskin-Robbins, we brought back the guy that runs Baskin-Robbins?
But like that, it's like this thing where it's like when you watch the first one, I don't have a problem with it in the first one because it's like the guys can shrink and they can get big because they're wearing a suit, and it's like, okay, this is like a thing that confines them, and they can get small, they can get big. Then we get to the second movie, and it's like they are shrinking and then going into small things, and they have their like into small vehicles, and they have the windows rolled down, and I'm like, okay, so is there a force field around the van that's turning everything within it smaller, or like? But when you roll the windows down, are the air particles smaller, or are the air particles still big? Like what's like, huh? And then it's like
That'd be fair. You wouldn't be thinking about this as much in still images in a comic book.
No, I mean probably not. But then it's like Scott Lang gets really big in his Ant-Man suit, and then is able to somehow shrink inside of the suit without the suit shrinking, get out of it. I'm like, what is happening? And then earlier in this movie, it's like there's like a small pizza that they have like a little dropper where they drop, I guess, Pym particles and they make it big. And
yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
Back to the Future too.
But I'm like, hold on. If they dropped it on a pepperoni, would only the pepperoni get big, or would the entire pizza be getting bigger? And if you eat that, because it's Pym particles in a dropper, is your stomach going to get big? Your stomach's connected to the rest of you, or is your entire body going to get big? Like, I don't know why in these Ant-Man movies, this is the thing that like my brain just gets caught up in. So when we get to the probability loop, it's like, okay, how is there a
what is
Baskin
even
Robbins
happening?
Like, how
they've not thought it out, so there's no reason for us to either. But yes,
Yeah.
that kind of thing drives me crazy. Because how would the Baskin Robbins version even be there? I like, is it hitchhiker probability where like there's this minuscule like one in a Googleplex chance that the Baskin Robbins version that never wore an Ant-Man suit is still in that space at that time? I don't know. I can't go with you there. Like.
I don't know. Yeah, like, did Kang did he go back in time? But no, Kang couldn't have because he's stuck down there. Okay, yeah, sorry, never mind.
Yeah. Okay, more super chats. Philip Kelton, 65 Mexican pesos. So how dumb is it that MODOK is just a rehash of a one-note bland villain? So this is one of the reasons that I brought up character representation, because I feel like these guys are a little bit out of touch, Connor, in thinking that anybody on the planet wants to see that villain again in any form. Like, he was super one note. He was a mustache twirling villain. His motivations never made any kind of sense. I detailed this in my rewind, where he's the most like stereotypical villain in some ways the Marvel movies ever had, and with Darren Cross. And then we get into this movie, and it's even worse because now we're trying to redeem a guy who is just bad, like in the first place.
The way we redeem him, like, there is an iconic tweet that is like hilarious, where it's like some teenage girl just said like, "ISIS, stop it! Like, please just stop." And it's like that's what Cassie does. She just walks up and is like, "How about you just don't?" And he's like, "Okay." It works.
She goes, "Don't," and forgive my French, but she says, "Don't be a dick." And he goes, "Oh, you're right. I don't want to be a dick." Why? You were fine with that before, and then they make it even worse. And this is where it feels like a self-parody. Like, we are inside of a comedy, but now it's the kind of comedy that is jumping the shark, where it's not the brand that it was before. Now it's making fun of itself, doesn't even know that it's making fun of itself, and it's not funny all at the same time. Where then you have Darren Cross. Is it just supposed to be funny because of that terrible effect? Where he looks up at Scott Lang. He makes the epic sacrifice. And, the personal sacrifice. So we're filling in for that formula, and with a character that it's not earned. Nobody cares to see this with this guy. And you make him MODOK, but then you don't let him live at the end. And like, I don't mean to be hypocritical, because I don't like this MODOK, so I don't care if he lives or dies. But at the very least, if it's got to be Darren Cross in the first place, we could have just said, okay, this is Darren Cross, but he's not Darren Cross anymore. Now he's MODOK, and give him like a totally new crazy personality, and that would have been a silly way to get there. But why does that have to keep being Darren Cross? You know what I mean? Like, just let that be the like building blocks of it, and then move on and like let him be MODOK. But anyway, he looks up at Scott Lang and he goes, "I always looked at you as a brother." And then Scott has this look on his face like, what the hell are you talking about? And then he's like, no, really, I did. And Scott is like, aw. What? It's nuts, man. Like, don't you hate it when you're watching a movie that feels like the Saturday Night Live sketch of the movie?
This feels like
Isn't that what that is?
It is, but it's also like the Deadpool 2 like dying gag in a way too, where it's.
Except that worked okay there.
Look, I didn't like that gag when I watched it all those years ago. Since then, I have seen that scene done like 4 or 5 times, like both as a joke and like seriously. And I'm like, man, that joke's kind of aged pretty well for me because like I've now seen it.
Yeah, just in comparison. Yeah, well, and again, like comedy is real subjective, of course, but like it at least fit with the rest of that film.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, I had no idea what was going on. It was so weird where, like you said, it's the SNL joke. And it's like, I think Paul Rudd's like bafflement and like confusion at the scene and just trying to console him is like, his timing is funny, but the actual scene, I'm like, why did you think to put this in your movie? Like, I'm confused.
Do you think, what is the purpose of it? Do you think anyone is moved by it?
Was anybody wanting to see the redemption arc for Darren Cross?
Was anybody wanting to see Darren Cross survive in the first place? Like, look, so here's what, let me break down just how absurd this is, because I don't know if you've thought this through, Connor, like just how insane this is. So what we did with Darren Cross was we made up a character, we made up a villain based on a variant costume of our hero. So all Darren Cross is in the first place is Yellow Jacket, which wasn't a villain. That was a version of Ant-Man. We felt like a good enough rogues gallery for Ant-Man. So your very first Ant-Man villain, we made a bad guy based on your costume. So a variant Ant-Man costume became MODOK. It's stupider than you think.
That's really late. Okay, so I got a question.
Yeah.
What is Ant-Man's rogues gallery? I've never read an Ant-Man comic. I know Ghost is an Iron Man villain. Kang is an Avengers villain, and MODOK is just out there in the Marvel cosmos, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
So
is it just Avengers characters, and then he mixes it up with other people's rogues gallery? I'm sure he has one, but I've not read a lot of solo Ant-Man comics.
Yeah, I know our colleague Josh. Josh, if you're in the comments, you've read Ant-Man. What are Ant-Man villains?
Is there somebody we should have been doing? Like, does he have an arch nemesis? Is there somebody we should have been using this whole time? Because it really looks like, well, and sorry guys, we'll get back to super chats. I just saw a few more pop in, but it's like we always early on. Well, I say early on. No, we still do it. So often our villains in these movies are the flip of the hero in theme. So you got your evil Iron Mans and you got your evil Black Panthers, etc., etc. So this was like, we don't really want to do any villains that Ant-Man has, if he has any. So we got to have the evil Ant-Man. So we'll just do. That's when you know you probably should just axe the project. You know what I mean? Because it's like, and I don't hate that first Ant-Man movie. Don't get me wrong. But if you can't even be inspired enough by the concept to come up with an interesting villain that's not just like knockoff poor man Ironmonger, then maybe don't do it. Maybe don't make it. The villain, in some ways, the villain should have been Hank Pym. I've always said that. Not actually the bad guy of the movie, but just like something of a more like morally ambiguous sort of negative force. Because that's what's interesting about Hank Pym a lot in the comics is that he does sometimes do the the wrong things for the right reasons kind of thing. And it would have been interesting to have that be your odds.
And I can also see like doing like an alternate ant costume that's in the comics and just like repurposing that for like a villain. That's not a bad idea, I don't think, inherently. And I don't.
No, you're right. It's funny because it didn't work.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I like Edgar Wright. Like, I think he's a very talented filmmaker. And I think that with Peyton Reed, like, I don't get how he fell into this line of work, being like this guy who makes, like, he's directed episodes of The Mandalorian. He makes the Ant-Man movies. He's now doing like the big kickoff to Phase 5. I'm sure he's a really nice guy, but I don't get like it's weird because I think that with the first Ant-Man, Edgar Wright developed that for years. And I know I've heard people say, well, he wasn't allowed to use any of that pre-production. I don't believe that, because if you look at the test footage, like, that Edgar Wright did, it is like little Ant-Man like jumping on the gun and running and punching people. Like, I've seen that. And apparently that's what Edgar Wright had like put together. And it's in a different aspect ratio than the rest of the Marvel movies. It's in 185-1. I think the only other Marvel movie in that aspect ratio is the first Avengers. Like, and basically what I think happened was they're like, we have all this development on an Ant-Man movie. We need somebody to basically just make the movie because we have like all this stuff ready to go. And then Peyton Reed was like, I'll do it. And then he got a lot of credit for making that. And then when it came to making Ant-Man and the Wasp, he didn't have anyone's like homework to copy off of. So he just made a not very good movie. And then he made a bunch of not very good episodes of The Mandalorian. But because Luke Skywalker was at the end of one of them, people said it was great. Like, I feel like he's gaslit the entire industry into thinking he's a really good filmmaker. And then we get this, which feels like confirmation bias to me. I feel like I'm being really mean to that guy. I don't mean to be. I've been bored and unimpressed.
I think he's just serviceable. Like, I don't think he's... I didn't think he was incompetent until some of the scenes with this movie, but I also think that, like you said earlier, he's just overly ambitious, and this is not his wheelhouse. Like some of the more kind of cosmic type actually he's trying to do. The biggest irony, and I got to mention this because I know people are gonna say it in the live comments here. The biggest irony is that he's dancing all around Fantastic Four mythology right now, and he almost made a Fantastic Four movie in the early 2000s. He was the first choice and ended up falling out of that and isn't getting to make Fantastic Four. And I just think that's so interesting that, like, now he's using Kang, which is intrinsically involved in Fantastic Four, like is a Richards, and he's not making Fantastic Four. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder...
God,
I'm sorry, what?
I said, thank God, but like...
Well, sometimes I wonder if it's just who you can get along with. You see all these directors that are kind of failing upward right now, and also producers and stuff too, like Alex Kurtzman, and you're just like, you know, you keep failing and nobody's watching your Star Trek, but you got another 5-year contract. How does that happen? Is it just who you can get along with? Like, it's either that or blackmail.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
right?
think Colin
like,
Trevorrow is like... but...
How?
But man, I feel really mean, and I here's what I'll say. I don't.
Well, you're just calling it like you're seeing it.
Yeah, but like
some people will feel like you're hyperbolic. I don't think he's a. Again, I didn't think he was an awful, incompetent director, but then there's a couple of scenes here that just look so rough.
Here's what I'd say. I think he is probably a competent workman. Like, he made Yes Man. He made a few other comedies.
Oh, I forgot he made that. Yeah, Yes Man.
So it's like, I don't think he is bad at his job. I think what happened here...
He's not a good action director.
I know. So
and like you said, like a lot of that action that I like in that first movie, if he didn't actually make some of that, then that's you know, that tells you something. But like a lot of what I like in that is CG stuff.
Yeah. I think that when it came to, like, between Ant-Man and the Wasp and this movie, there's the advent of the stagecraft volume sets. And I think what Peyton Reed saw in that was like this limitless potential, sort of like what George Lucas and Robert Rodriguez saw in digital filmmaking around the turn of the millennium. And I know a lot of people have been like memeing on this movie, comparing it to Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and Spy Kids 3.
I was seeing that in the comments at the beginning.
They're not wrong.
Yeah, it does kind of look like that.
And yeah, so what we have here is, I mean, hey, Edgar Wright's regular cinematographer Bill Pope somehow shot this movie. So maybe like Edgar Wright's Ant-Man movie would have been bad too. Like, I'm not trying to simp for that guy or whatever, but like when it comes to this, like, I think there is just like this commitment to this technology that we're really testing the limits of, and I think we found
it.
We found it. Yeah, and so much of this looks like artificial and synthetic, and I didn't believe in the world of the quantum realm.
Yeah, built the factory, and in some cases, built in somebody's basement. I'm sorry to say, because a lot of because they're like with MODOK, because some of the effects just look like things I've seen in fan films, and it's very strange to see in a big budget MCU movie. Guys, we're gonna take a real quick 2-minute break, and then when we come back, we will read down these super chats. And my apologies for not getting to very many of them yet. Give us just 2 minutes, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get to the rest of these super chats. But real quick, before we do that, I just want to mention, in case it doesn't come up, because it'd be weird if we didn't talk about this. Hey, Connor, what'd you think of Bill Murray in this movie?
He sat down really fast.
I knew you were going to say that. I set him up for it. There was the payoff. Well done, sir.
Well, thank you.
That's all I could think about in the theater was I was like, there's a chair there. He's going to sit down in that chair, and he's not going to get up for a long time. I thought he did an okay job. It was kind of weird that he kind of just has a role somewhat similar, I guess, to what's his face in Ragnarok, Jeff Goldblum. And like it feels like, I mean, it's not the same character, but it feels like the same sort of cameo where it's like, here's this kind of fun, eccentric guy that you're used to having a lot of fun with on screen, but he's got this like creepy dark streak. And in this case, we're supposed to think that he's our ally, and then it turns out he's working for the bad guy. It was a mistake to not have that character come back, I think. Like, if Bill Murray's only going to do one scene, that's not the role you give him, because I felt like he was in almost, like, too important of a role to only be in there the one scene.
It did seem a little odd, especially considering, like, the history Janet has with him, which does feel like it's only there to be a gag I've seen 100 times before. And it's like the level of authority he has. Like, it does feel like once they got Bill Murray, they're like, we only got him for a day, so we have to condense this role to like fit.
Maybe that's what happened. Yeah, and I mean, I might have complained if, they do that kind of stunt casting and he's not in a very consequential role, but I don't know that I would have thought that, because like we've done that with, major actors before, and obviously all the Stan Lee cameos. I don't know that it would have been that big of a deal to have Bill Murray just show up and have a couple lines and have a fun scene if you wanted to do that. So, I'm gonna stand by my criticism with that like that character is too important to be in that one scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially considering like how involved he seems to be in like the politics of the quantum realm. Yeah, I don't know. It did seem like he should be more of like a tag along, similar to where Scott and Cassie are hanging around, the mind reader guy and the goo guy and the gladiator woman. Like, he seems like he should be like that faction's analog to them.
I thought the telepath guy did a good job. I thought that actor was good.
Yeah, that's William Jackson Harper. Apparently he was on a show called The Good Place. A lot of people have been theorizing that he was going to be Mr. Fantastic. And he is really good in this movie called Midsummer, which I'm not crazy about, but he's really good in that. So
okay. I got real sick of the holes joke real fast.
Yep.
Real fast. That was just like, if he had just said it the one time and we'd moved on, it wouldn't feel as kind of crass to me as it did, but we just kept doing it, and it started, I've never said this about an MCU movie, it started bordering on almost the like Transformers thing to me.
Yeah, especially like, but then like the payoff to it in the climax feels like they're trying to turn it around and be like, oh, no, it's goofy now. Like, it's not as crass as it was, but it got pretty close in that one scene.
Yeah, it really did. Well, and we had to like, spell out the number of holes people have and all that. I was like, why are we doing? Oh, I know why. Because the Rick and Morty guy wrote it. That's why.
Rick and Mortar.
Yeah, it's a Rick and Mortar store. It's a store that only sells Rick and Morty, and they don't sell it on the internet. Wheelchair symbol, $5 super chat. This is the blandest / lamest / most boring MCU project to me. Cap, looking forward to your Pirates 3 commentary and one day your thoughts on Andor. Almost like you saying, I'm just here to leave you the super chat and say, would you please review things I care about?
I've been meaning to watch Andor for a while.
Me too. I keep forgetting it exists.
Me too.
I'm gonna need somebody to just constantly send me messages about that.
I've had like.
I'm not. I actually don't want people to constantly send me messages about that. But I'm just saying that, like, I keep forgetting it exists.
I've had like 3 people that are like, I also don't like Disney Plus, Connor. You have to see Andor though. I'm like, okay, I will. But then I forget.
Maybe if you and I are able to get together in person this year, that'll just be the one thing we do. We just binge through Andor.
Yeah, Andor and Y the Last Man, right? So.
I'm not watching Y the Last Man, though.
Oh, no, the book.
The book. I'm not doing that. Yeah, we'll just read it together. We'll just sit on a couch and read it to each other. Great and Powerful Dodd, $4.99. Sorry. I already read that one. Why did they hire the designers of Thumb Wars? That was wonderful. Austin, $6.99 Canadian. Hey, Connor, would you be willing to rewrite your vampire movie as Blade 2, The Coming of the Midnight Suns?
Look, there's some dialogue in Blade 2 that I do enjoy, but it's very crass.
Well, I think he means whatever the MCU Blade 2 would be. Maybe that's why he's saying that. I don't know.
No.
Philip Kelton writing, this movie is a farce. This is why I keep telling Cap to read Immortal Hulk. Hey, if I send you my volumes, would you read them? I mean, you can make a request in the request here, and I'll review that. I'm just not a big Hulk guy, so I keep forgetting about it and I haven't gotten around to it. And yes, I've reviewed a couple of single issues of Incredible Hulk on Not Spawn Year this year, but that's because I have them, and I'm trying to create a little bit of variety of things on that show. But yeah, the writing, for the most part, is not good in this movie. But again, this is where my standards are. At least it's not a lot of actors trying to be funny and making up dialogue in the moment. So, it's a step up from that, I guess. Look, I probably would have been shocked by more of the choices in this movie. The MODOK thing I can't begin to forgive, but like I might have been shocked by some of that stuff before Ragnarok. And now, sadly, there's like a level of quality like a bar of quality that's been set low enough that we know that MCU is capable of some of this stuff. You know, if it happened one time and never again, okay, that was a misstep. We hired a guy we probably shouldn't have. But then you let him make Love and Thunder, and then this movie happens, and I don't know. There've been a few MCU movies that are like way under the track record of what MCU used to do. And it's just happened too quickly. It's kind of sad. Okay, I'm trying to get to the rest of these super chats, but am I going to have to refresh this page? Because I can't get this to scroll down. Can you find the one after Philip Kelton and read it to me? My page is unresponsive.
I'm scrolling.
Oh, wait. I've got it now. I think. Hold on. There are quite a few. Give me a second, guys.
Well, we got one. Celebrate the first super chat from Dubby. Celebrate it. We're celebrating.
Oh, we're celebrating? Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to...
This isn't even scrolling all the way to the top anymore. Oh, yeah. That's... Oh, I see why you're saying that. I thought you meant he wrote that in his super chat. No, he just put in a super chat without a question, but I appreciate the super chat. And yeah, Google is like, celebrate it. Okay, we will. Wait, you know what I need to do? I need to keep party favors at my desk just for these kinds of occasions. They're like...
I got one in my van from New Year's. I'll bring mine.
Oh, no, the next super chat is his. Well, now I feel bad because I think he gave us 2 super chats. In the first one, he just couldn't get his question in, so he gave us another super chat. But thanks, Dubby. Appreciate you, man. So that's another $4.99. Thoughts on the recent announcement that Ben Affleck is set to play the Sprankle Dankler? I don't know what that is. In the recently announced Spider-Man Live by Night? I'm assuming that's a joke of some kind.
Yeah, I think that might be a friend of mine. I don't know.
Is that a joke? Okay.
I think it might be. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's not a that doesn't have anything to do with this movie. So I appreciate the super chats, but we're gonna move on. But hopefully people found that amusing. And now he just put in another one, $4.99. MODOK is so hot and attractive. Love him. Okay. I can't decide if we're being trolled or if the movie is being trolled right now, but I'm fine either way. Thanks for the super chats. Great, powerful God. Say again.
I said it'd be funny if Ben Affleck was cast as MODOK. That'd be funny.
Oh no, that'd be great casting. That could be really funny. Get it? Because he's handsome. 49 super chat. I think the best movie for at the MCU after Endgame would have been to do a time jump and follow up with an Avengers movie with a whole new roster. I dig that idea a lot.
Yeah,
I dig that idea a lot. Go forward. Okay, so the only reservation, and I'm saying this kind of going back in time because now that we have that whole Phase 4, I would be completely fine with that. After Endgame, I might have cried foul on that because the big thing I wanted after Endgame was, can we please explore the status quo now? With, you know, all these characters that, like, half the universe comes back and you had 5 years of crisis without them, the world would look very different. Can we please explore that? I don't want to just move on and pretend like it didn't happen. And you'd be risking that if the very next thing you did was another time jump. But now retroactively seeing what we've had, I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, I feel like that...
Wipe the slate clean and don't have too many characters that we're already familiar with.
It is kind of like a weird... post-Endgame has been like kind of a weird arena to be in because it's like you have... Like, we're trying to check in with all these characters we know and love. And then it's like we also want to introduce all these new people, which causes this crazy volume of projects coming out. And we're trying to... have new beginnings, reflect on what's happened, and it's been a little difficult to see, like, kind of get like a uniting feeling on what the Marvel Universe really looks like. And I think having a time jump would be good to just have a new starting point, a new status quo, and maybe with hindsight, obviously this is like armchair critics, but like,
Yeah.
maybe that probably would have been a better choice, honestly.
Yeah, and again, it's easy to say that in hindsight, because at the time, I think I would have resisted that. What might have been, okay, so for the story, what might have been smart would have been to have introduced maybe a few more characters that we were going to deal with in their own shows and movies during Endgame. So the time jump happens there instead of having another time jump after it. And then, like, some of your new team that you're dealing with is there, but the problem is they wanted to make that a reunion movie, and it was more popular because it was a reunion movie. But then the question is, it's kind of the risk reward of the huge success you have now versus the more ongoing success and trust that your audience is going to have in you moving forward. And as I've said a lot, the big problem with Endgame is you have a big ending and then you go, wait, don't go away. Like the universe continues. It will get even bigger and crazier. Don't worry, you'll want to stick around. And I think a lot of people after Endgame certainly didn't want the Marvel Universe to end, but and wanted their excitement to be continued to ramp up, and have had difficulty, as I predicted would happen, staying invested.
Mm-hmm. There is a carrying capacity to this kind of stuff, and I remember being in like high school and reading stuff by Jonathan Hickman and Grant Morrison, and just really thinking multiverse stuff was cool. And I was always confused why people were so hesitant and like anti-multiverse. And I feel like ever since high school, I've seen why, and especially with this Marvel stuff, I've really started to see why, because I think that between Loki and What If and these other Marvel projects, it's like I feel like the rules are very nebulous and fast and loose, and it's very difficult to care.
And they didn't have to be. We could have handled this a lot more thoughtfully, but we needed to take our time with it more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great and Powerful Don, 49 Super Chat. I think the best movie... Oh, I'm sorry. I just read that. My apologies. Day Ghost. This is Austin, 699. Austin is still talking about a movie he hasn't seen yet, but knows everything about. Cassie redeeming MODOK is the exact same as not Megan Fox convincing Megatron to help Optimus in Transformers 3. This is how far we've sunk, folks. And I've only seen that movie one time, so I don't remember that part.
I sadly remember that part. She says, Your what's the Leonard Nimoy character? Like, what's in that movie? Is he like Galvatron? Or I'm not a Transformers guy, but he says
he's Galvatron in the '86 movie. Is he playing Unicron?
No, it's like Moon.
Unicron is in that, but Leonard Nimoy is also in that.
No, like Leonard Nimoy's in the Transformers: Dark of the Moon, right?
No, I know.
He plays like Moon Man.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying is Leonard Nimoy is Galvatron in '86. I don't think he's Galvatron again.
Oh, okay.
In the I can't remember who he's playing in that, but they brought him back because of his history with that franchise.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with anything. And Austin, I wonder if you've seen this yet, but I was in a store the other day, and you know what they have right now? And I'm thinking about getting this for Mikey, because Mikey loves Transformers. They have a giant pop Unicron. Like one of the really big pops, and it's Unicron, and he looks great.
That's pretty cool.
From that movie. Anyway, I am looking for the rest of the Super Chats, but the chat is moving pretty quickly here.
Philip Kelton, this is the next one with 65 Mexican pesos.
Okay, there's just a bunch of comments in between. They should have done mutants and blamed it on everyone brought back by the Infinity Stones. I mean, I think it's too premature, at least in my mind, to say what they should do with the mutants yet until we see how they actually handle that. But that would have been a way to deal with it. I know a lot of people have said that. But help me with my timeline. Was the Fox deal? Yeah, the Fox deal wasn't solidified yet when Endgame came out. So as they're putting that movie together, there's no way they could deal with mutants in it at all. I don't think. Am I right?
I don't know.
Is it in 2020 that's finally solidified, or is it not, or is it 19? But even if so, that movie comes out in 19. Like, I don't think they could have even mentioned mutants in that movie yet.
And they're like, that deal first happens at the very end of 2017, and I think they were already
was it
finished.
That early?
Yeah, I remember standing in line for Last Jedi when I read the news that they had made the purchase.
I just couldn't remember. Yeah, it's all running together.
Yeah, no, and so it's like, but I remember earlier that year is when like I saw the set photos of like, we're shooting Infinity War, like it's happening, and they shot Infinity War and Endgame back to back. So I think it was done shooting by that point. Yeah, so there was no way of doing that.
Folks, let me know if I missed any super chats, because I feel like there must be some that I have not knocked out yet, but I'm not seeing any more at the moment. Anyway, so what else do we need to talk about with this? Have we sufficiently grilled and lampooned MODOK at this point?
No, there is no limit.
But did we cover every important thing with that? I guess we did.
I guess so.
Yeah.
You see his little MODOK butt, if anyone wants to see that.
You see what I'm saying? Just some juvenile humor, because that's what this writer does.
I guess so.
Mutali, they didn't get the rights to the mutants till 2019. See, I thought it was too early.
I got a question to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel about every time we mention mutants, we've had the X-Men like musical like cartoon score, little sting? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's just fan service for the sake of fan service.
Okay.
I don't know, how do you feel about it?
I think it's stupid, but like, because it's like,
I'm not surprised by anything anymore, but like, it doesn't have anything to do with specifically that version.
Well, it's like, it's weird to me because it's like,
I'd be more okay with da-da-da-da-da, because
that would make more sense.
It would make more sense because they're at least, especially with Deadpool 3, they're at least going to be connected to that universe. And I get that they're going to do another season. And I guess they've already greenlit another one, even though that hasn't come out yet. Did I read that of the 90s X-Men show? But like, you know how I feel about animated things in live action being in the same continuity. I usually feel kind of funky about it, and I don't really want the 90s X-Men to be part of this multiverse. But whatever. But anyway, yeah. I don't care for it.
Yeah. Okay. It's just weird that we've used the multiverse to cannibalize the comic book like genre now, and it's just weird that we're bringing in 90s cartoon. Like, that feels so foreign compared to all the other stuff we're doing. Oh, you there? Cannot hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. Can you scroll up and just see if we have any more super chats? My machine is running kind of slow, and I'm having a hard time getting to everything here.
I've scrolled up as far as I can. I have not seen any that we haven't answered, but TH1
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Tom claims that. Oh, here we go. No, I've got him. Okay, cool. Yeah, I thought we had stuff before that W super chat. You took us down too far, Connor. Tom, $5 super chat. I'm glad they didn't get stuck there. It would have felt like they were just doing the end of the last one and felt like a repeat. And I've heard that complaint, but I still think it's better than what we did. It feels too inconsequential. And yeah, again, I don't mean to put the movie in a damned if you do, damned if you don't place. I may have also had that complaint, but I've got to critique the movie we have. And the movie we have has makes it feel real contrived and rushed in getting them rescued there. I'm glad actually he brought this up because, Connor, this was actually a big point I wanted to make, which is Cassie's crazy in that scene. Have you thought about this? So they all get through the portal, and Scott is tangling with Kang. And I expect immediately Cassie runs right back through that portal. Why does she stay on the other side? That's crazy. Think about this character and what she's been all about this whole movie. And tell me it's because she's learned something, because that's crap. Like, that's not what's happening. So Every time somebody needs her, she runs in half-cocked without thinking about the consequences. And this is her father. And she doesn't, and she's got a suit, and she's been being a superhero, and she doesn't run back through that portal. Really? And you don't see, this is why I'm pretty positive that this was an 11th hour change, and they really rushed the reshoot and didn't think very much about the logic of it, because you don't even have the others like Janet and Hank holding her back or anything. She's standing there.
Yeah, but
she's waiting for her dad to come back. I get it first, like, oh, where's dad? And then like contemplating it, but it's a real long time. She never goes back in. And then Janet does. And Janet jumps in like, Hope does. And I accidentally went to the Wasp that matters.
Yeah.
So Hope.
It does feel like
Hope jumps back in like she can see what's happening in that room. She jumps in with a kick or something. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was saying like it feels like a reshoot where they're like, Evangeline Lilly doesn't have enough to do, so let's just shoot it so that she can like participate in the climax because like she's one of the title characters.
Well, I think they should have both gotten stuck there.
No, I do too. But like when you talk about like,
but you're right.
Why is it Hope that goes through the portal? I don't know. Probably, yeah. It is weird. And like Cassie does do the thing where she's like, well, I'll just open up the portal again because I can do that from my end. But I was also a little confused by that. Like I thought she could like send a signal down there, and MODOK opened up the portal. How can she just open up a portal from that side of the quantum realm?
Okay, so I just want to... Yeah, exactly. And again, it looks like she can see what's happening in that portal, but she can't.
Yeah.
So I have to pause everything for a minute and just say that either we've been talking too long or this movie is so uncompelling to most of our audience that they don't even want to talk about that. And instead, this is the conversation I'm seeing in the comments right now. It's people discussing whether I would beat Batman in a fight with prep time. Robo Brando, with prep time, Captain Logan might win. I just think that's amazing that he even thought about it like that. He said, with respect, Batman would beat up Captain Logan without prep time. But if I had prep time, maybe I could, if I had a Rocky montage, I could tangle with Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Which generation, any of them, doesn't matter, man.
If you had prep time and Apollo Creed, you'd be able to take him down.
Yeah, as the guy in my corner, not even Mickey, Apollo Creed.
Yeah,
he's got to be the guy in my corner. Great and powerful. Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
No, I mean you've been like bulking, like you're getting in shape, man. Like I believe him. Like I believe you could take him. You know.
Not yet. I need at least a couple more months and probably like boxing lessons at the very least. Yeah, I'll beat Batman boxing. Great and powerful Dodd 499. I just can't wait for Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel in Marvel's The Marvels. How many Marvels could Marvel marvel if Marvel could Marvel? I really wish that movie was called Marvel's The Marvels. Because it's always Marvels, everything else. What is your prediction for that movie? How does that perform?
How much did this make opening weekend? About 106 or something.
Which is preposterous, by the way, that it's doing that well.
Well, Marvel is sort of the way.
So far, it says 225.
That's probably worldwide, though, right?
Yeah. I don't know what domestic is. I have to scroll down. I got to scroll down, Connor.
Scroll. Keep scrolling. Let's see. I think the way Marvel makes their money is increasingly first weekend oriented. So I'm gonna say that
around 105, 110 maybe.
I say the Marvels makes 85 to 115 opening weekend. That's my guess.
Say it again.
I'll say 105. I'll say it makes 105 opening weekend.
Yeah. It shouldn't do that well. Well, maybe it'll be better than I'm expecting. I don't mean to be like that, because we've at least got, two of those three actresses I have liked now in those roles. So I mean, at least there's that. But
yeah, I don't know. I think the first Captain Marvel movie is, well, when I first saw it, I thought it was fine. But I don't know. Like, it seems like this sequel is, I think it's called The Marvels because there isn't really like a sequel hook for the Captain Marvel character, and it sounds like a weird, like, not body swap thing, like just body teleportation thing, which is a weird premise. And
oh, is it? I didn't know that.
yeah, I thought I heard them say that at like D23 or like an Investor Day call or something. It's like Ms. Marvel, like Ms. Marvel and Captain Marvel just keep switching places.
Oh,
and that's, I guess, the hook.
Exciting.
It's kind of an odd premise to me, but
so
I don't know.
I'm sure they had every intention of just making another Captain Marvel movie, and then because people have not been, despite the box office, as enamored with her as they thought they'd be, or maybe because they're finding it difficult to work with that actress. I don't know. I mean, I don't entirely know why they've made that choice. They're going with a team movie. And, of course, it would have been a team movie anyway, right? Like, even if it was Captain Marvel 2, it would have been a team movie. But what's kind of weird about it is, all things being equal, and I would, I'd be... I'm saying this regardless of the fact that I didn't care for that movie, but like I would really feel like this way if I liked that movie. This is one of those rare things that shouldn't even really feel that much like a sequel, because what we had is basically a prequel for a movie that doesn't exist yet. I mean, that's a 90s period piece just to establish a character that you then put in an Avengers movie. That's not really Captain Marvel 2. It's kind of more like that was Captain Marvel 0. And then you make Captain Marvel, but we're not even going to get that movie now, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was weird. Like, I just feel like the way Marvel's handled the Captain Marvel character has been odd, because like in her first movie, like we don't really get to know who she is until like, well, we don't really get to know who she is. She's dealing with an amnesia plot the entire time. And then like at the end, she's like ascended to some weird god level. And then you get to like Endgame and she's kind of aloof. Like she's like, I'm busy doing something else, bye. And she's like always taken off. Like she's never hanging around for us to get to know her. And Ms. Marvel, like the opening monologue of that is basically playing apologetics for that. Like it feels like a weird knowing, like we know how.
I didn't think of that.
Like it feels like Marvel is like, I don't know if this is like they're designing the Captain Marvel character to be kind of like impenetrable or what, but like it's a really weird thing where like if I'm taking away the cultural response to that movie, I'm taking away like general audience enjoyment or cultural whatever, and I'm just looking at the movies, like it just feels weird to me that like Marvel has chosen to treat this character this way. It's like they're deliberately trying to make her this like arm's length. We're never really figuring out who she is. Like it's a very odd
and even
choice.
In her own movie she doesn't really have a character arc.
Exactly. Yeah,
we're real distanced from her. That's a terrific point. I don't mean to just talk about Captain Marvel, but
but like and I like I don't know, like I don't have like that dislike for that character, because I feel like I'm still I'll just wait and see.
No, I just nothing that character.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm kind of in the same boat, and so maybe this whole The Marvels is basically in search of Captain Marvel's character. Like I don't know.
Well, what would be cool is if we, again, all things being equal, and I kind of get why they pivoted, although it's real. It's not even thinly veiled, where it's like, oh, this was supposed to be a cultural phenomenon. It wasn't. So now we got to back her up with. I mean, it feels like Captain Marvel's got backup singers now. You know, she needs somebody to back her up.
Hey, it's the Marvelettes, right? Like what Sam Jackson says at the end of the movie.
But what would be cool? I forgot about that. And now I'm just thinking about the stupid cat retcon, and it makes me want to kill people. But anyway, so you, not anyone specific. So you then.
Well, hey, it says like they're telling me that you would beat me up but feel bad about it. You can look. I give you permission to kill me just as long as you feel bad about it.
Okay,
know what I mean?
All right.
We're cool.
I'll file that away. I appreciate your giving me. Anyway. This is all a joke. So, Captain Marvel, it'd be nice if we had a movie, again, all things being equal, where we follow her doing something that she does when she, rushes off to deal with the rest of the universe, and do maybe kind of a more serious cosmic thing as opposed to the Guardians and the Ragnarok of it all. Because we still haven't really had that movie. Eternals rubbed up against it, but we still haven't quite had that movie. The more kind of... What's the right word? Like a science fiction film with more gravitas, like you would expect for a Silver Surfer kind of level film. You know what I mean?
A space opera epic type thing.
Yeah, that's more operatic.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, here's one more super chat. Mutale says, "Did you miss Scott's crew?" And also MODOK's butt. Yes, we did talk about that. I'm so glad that came up again. But yeah, a part of me did, just because, again, I was surprised that this was... He's talking about the comedians that he works with in the other two movies, and his crew that helps him steal stuff. It's a little weird having them missing, because this does feel more like an Ant-Man movie than I expected, and I thought maybe they would at least get a cameo someplace. I don't know how you'd use them to be a major part of the plot, and I'm glad that this whole cast wasn't shrunk down into the quantum realm. Like, that's good.
Yeah, at least like Judy Greer and Bobby Cannavale aren't like the weird like stepdad of Cassie is down there for some reason.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, one of the members of his crew, David Dismalchin, he played the Polka Dot Man. He's the voice of one of the weird like creatures down there.
Oh.
I don't know which one.
Okay. It's probably the whole guy, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. That guy's in everything.
He is.
He's such a character actor. Yeah. He's the guy that's he's the creepy weird guy that's working for the Joker in that scene with all the shooting in Dark Knight, where where Gordon fakes his death. Yeah.
He's in Dune.
He is in Dune. Yeah, and he's in the AVGN movie. I always have to bring that up.
What he is?
Yeah, he's got a cameo in that because he loves AVGN. So he called up James Rolfe, got himself in the movie.
Nice.
I know. That's a perk of being a popular actor, I guess. You get to be in James Rolfe's AVGN movie. One more thing I wanted to bring up real quick is the framing device with this is super sloppy, as with a lot of other things. We make it kind of a reveal, and I sort of liked this, that we've got the standard voiceover. Have we done that in every Ant-Man movie, where we've opened and closed with a voiceover? I know we did in the last one, or at least I think we did. I can't remember.
I don't know.
But anyway, so we open with a voiceover, and it turns out that he's reading from his book. Sorry, I'm jumping around. One of the most awkward moments in the movie, Connor, is when I was baffled by this choice. Is when Scott is surprised that Hank has read his book. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
And then Hank, again, excuse my French, he goes, every damn word. Every goddamn word. And I was like, I don't understand this performance. You can just see Douglas writing signing a contract that says, I don't have to do any more of these.
Did you hear what he said in an interview? Where he's saying, like, I'll come back and do Ant-Man 4 as long as I die.
Did he really? That's great. But that was really weird. Anyway, so the point I was trying to make is you get to the end of the movie, and we got voiceover again, and I'm waiting for this to somehow be like a sequel to his book or something. And nope, it's just voiceover now.
I had the same, like...
That's kind of weird.
Like, what am I listening to here? Is he writing a book about being in the quantum realm? I don't know.
And then I thought maybe it would be that... that after credit scene from Iron Man 3 where it turns out that he's like sitting on the couch talking to Bruce Banner, but it wasn't that sort of thing either. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about MODOK. I'm glad I thought about this. Is they were trying that movie is patting itself on the back for how clever it thinks it is for making that the way to get us to MODOK, and it seems like it thinks it's doing Arnim Zola again. with Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Did you have that
yeah.
thought?
I had it like a few hours after watching. I was like, wait a minute. Like they're trying to reincorporate that with like a big head or like a head guy, right? Where it's like Arnim Zola's just like a head in a computer.
And make it a big reveal of a guy that you thought was dead.
Yeah. But like in the case of Arnim Zola, like it's cool. But in this one, it's like.
And also,
like
that's reinventing a character thing already. This wasn't MODOK. Like Arnim Zola is a head in like a robot body.
Yeah, but it's weird to me because
or
it's
whatever
like,
he is.
I don't get. Like, I feel like they're really doing mental gymnastics to get Darren Cross to be MODOK, where it's like, well, if you remember, like when he's shrinking down in the first one, it's like his head doesn't really get shrunken. So, and it's like it's so convoluted and like weird. I don't know.
And then it's also kind of, in a weird way, Red Skull again, too.
How so?
Well, it's a character that you thought was dead, but it turns out that he just, I mean, everybody thought Red Skull was actually just in the Cosmic Cube, but you know what I mean, where it's like he's gone, and then he shows up like years later in another movie.
Right.
It's kind of that again. Oh, hey, here's a question. How did the ants evolve?
I have no idea.
If the ants evolved, why didn't the humans evolve? What was different about the way the ants came in?
I guess they fell into some pocket of the quantum realm where time moves differently. I guess.
Okay, here's a question. If Scott is wondering if time moves differently real far down in the quantum realm, then like he should know that it doesn't, because Janet is the age that she should be, and she was down there. And like, I think at that point in the movie, he already knows that. I can't remember. Maybe not. But I thought he already knew that she'd been like that far in. But is the idea that if you go down that deep, that potentially time moves differently? I guess it doesn't matter, because I guess it doesn't. But it's just kind of weird that we use the time dilation thing just to get the ants like advanced, and that whole thing is really super silly, of course. But then we also say, well, in this other place, it doesn't move. Time doesn't move any differently because Janet's got to be the age she is.
Yeah.
The only thing it explains is how she ate food.
I guess so. Well, here's my thing. Like, how did Janet? What was Janet doing in that upper part of the quantum realm to where she could like possess Scott? Like, what? Like, how'd
she get there? No, I know. I had that.
Why
too.
was she up there? How did she get up there? Like, I don't know.
I think it's a retcon.
Mm-hmm. You think so? Like, this whole movie feels like, in a lot of ways, not like one big retcon, but it's doing to justify its existence. And I think to like try to get the ball rolling on future Kang stuff, like it does feel like it is retconning a decent amount, especially like Janet. Like, I feel like Janet's kind of been given, like, done a dirty hand with this, like,
she's been massively shafted.
Yeah, it's like I have the same thing you did, where when I heard the premise of this movie, you say this feels like this should have been a movie called Ant-Man and the Wasp, because if we're going down into the quantum realm to get Janet, like, why don't we just find that world down there? Why are we wasting time with this like ghost and all the stuff?
And wasting Lawrence Fishburne.
Wasting Lawrence Fishburne and like Walton Goggins and like all this kind of like sitcom-y stuff. And I guess it was all because they had a big genius like master plan to do Thunderbolts with Ghost, I guess. But like the thing is, like, I don't, yeah, so like Michelle Pfeiffer has very little to do. And what she does have to do is, like, with this movie, we're having to retool a lot about her motivation and what she's been up to, and like what she's been like. I don't know, like, I feel bad for this like Michelle Pfeiffer being in this role.
Yeah, and if only some of that was more clearly there in the first place. I don't mean that you had to spell it all out already, but it would have been nice if somebody could have whispered to Michelle Pfeiffer, okay, you have this really dark, jaded past. Because she's not really playing that. Although she's not really getting a chance to play anything.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a question. Did it occur to you that Ant-Man is embedded and chronologically, letter-wise, in the name Quantumania until you got to the end of the movie.
Quantumania?
Yeah, because I'd not thought of that.
Austin said something about that to me like a few weeks ago. He's like, I think it's called Quantumania because Ant-Man is in the title. I'm like, oh, you're right.
and he's right, because the end credits make a huge deal out of it.
It does, yeah.
Did you want to say anything about the after credit scenes?
Not really. One says Kang is coming, and I'm like, I know.
A bunch of Kangs are coming, and you get to see that actor get to play a bunch of different things. He's having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Majors is a good actor. I feel like we haven't talked about Kang at all in this video, but like...
Well, what is there to say? It's a prologue movie. Like,
I am in the same boat as you, man.
Look, his motivations are potentially interesting. I like the idea that he's... I mean, look, if I have to break this down for a second, I will, okay? I like the idea of a villain that makes all the same mistakes as all the other variants of himself that he thinks that he needs to take down. So his whole thing is... These other Kangs are destined to destroy the multiverse, and I'm self-aware about this in a way they're not for some reason, so I'm going to stop them. But I have the ends justifies the means mentality. It's okay for me to destroy any timeline or universe that I need to in order to make sure that that doesn't happen, which makes him just as bad as them and is doing the same thing that they're doing. And in his mind, the only difference is, well, he's trying to stop evil, so, like, he's casting himself as the hero. But then at the same time, he's the conqueror and thinks he's better than everybody else, and that seems maybe a little bit at odds with that whole thing. I'm not sure. And I can't decide if I want there to be more personal stakes for him in there, if I want him to have some sort of a tragic backstory or something to explain some of that, and maybe eventually we'll get that, although I don't know if we'll ever see that version again. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say what the next Kang is. Like, is he dead? Is he coming back?
We might meet, like, this character again, but, like, chronologically, it's, like, it's the past for him, but it's the future for us, and he can, like, show up as, like, a bad guy. And maybe in, like, Kang Dynasty or something, it's, like, he'll be doing something, and then he'll get, like, banished to the quantum realm, and then it's like, to see where his story ends, watch that movie you've already seen. It's time. It's crazy. I think that's how it might go down.
Well, I don't know, though, because the thing that's spurring on the kind of, like, you know, rah-rah revolution thing with the Kangs at the end is his death.
That's right. It'd be like a kind of like, yeah, but that's like time, like, right? Like time travel, you do like weird paradoxes and things like that. I think that, and then like the other like post-credit scene is like Loki. The sequel season to Loki is going to have Kang in it. And I was like, I know. So
I also predict that is the last time you'll see that.
See what?
An after-credit scene dealing with TV shows.
Oh, you think so?
I don't think they'll keep doing that. I could be wrong, because, I mean, obviously they're wanting to have still cross-pollination between those, but Feige is making a big deal out of they're slowing down, you know, production on those shows. They're going to, they need to, they're not going to have them coming out constantly, because you can tell it's hurt their numbers, and they lost a ton of money last quarter, and I think maybe last year, and, but like, I don't know that they're going to make as big of a deal out of you need to be watching everything. And I also predict that you'll be able to go into Kang Dynasty and not even see this movie.
That's kind of been their secret, right? The Marvel thing is like you don't need to have seen everything. They just make you feel like you need to have seen them. And I think that's kind of like why they're doing, like, they're killing off Kang every time he shows up. It's because, like, well, there was a version of Kang in Loki, but we killed him off. You don't need to worry about him.
And they'll kind of reestablish his cosmic awareness and his time travel shenanigans every time, yeah.
It's a new Kang, new motivation. It's still Jonathan Majors, so if you've seen the other stuff, you kind of can pat yourself on the back for being like, hey, it's him, cool. But I do think that when you get to like Kang Dynasty or other things, if you just care about Avengers and you don't care about Ant-Man, you can be like, oh, okay. Like maybe some characters will say, I've met this guy before, and then they'll be like, it's not the same guy I met before. It's the same but different. And then you can, as an audience member who's never seen that stuff, feel like, okay, the movie's explaining it to me. I didn't really miss anything in terms of what's relevant to this movie.
Yeah. That's probably how that'll play. Mutale put in a super chat and says, what if there was a council of Logan and Connors? My variants would just all be the various Captain Logans from Spawn Year. Be like Captain Cagliostro and Freakadoo and...
Oh my god, if there was a council of Connors, I would just set off a nuke. Like, no one needs that. No one needs that.
You'd have be the Connor that has an EMP and the Connor that has a nuke, and but it does kind of, I like the alliteration. It does roll off the tongue, like the Council of Connors. That sounds good. The Connor Council, as it were. Matali also put in another super chat and says the Beyonder is rumored to be a Kang variant. I had not heard that.
Who's the Beyonder?
The Beyonder is another kind of cosmic character that I only know from the 90s Spider-Man show, who's working with Madam Web.
Okay. Is that going to be in the Madam Web movie?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not, because it's not really a Spider-Man character, so chances are MCU has that, but not Sony.
What if Doctor Doom is a Kang variant? Because he's got green cloaks.
So I really hope the next season of What If isn't just every episode is that. Connor is, what if this person is a Kang variant? What if Stan Lee was a Kang variant?
Oh my god, you know that's going to happen.
There was another thing I wanted to ask you about the way they handled Kang, and I cannot remember what it was now. Oh, that's going to bug me. And then I'm going to get off camera and I'm going to remember it. I'm going to be like, dang it, we should talk about that.
What if Black Panther was Kang?
Oh, I remember what it was. We got to do What If Black Panther is everybody, right? Because we did that with Guardians. So with Star-Lord. So did it occur to you? And I know I always go to Star Trek. I had two big Star Trek things with this movie too. But one of them, Connor, is Kang is sort of Khan. He doesn't have the revenge thing exactly, maybe with Janet a little bit, that Khan does with Kirk. But he's Khan because he gets exiled and then he has the whole to rule in hell thing.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
And for anybody that is familiar with Star Trek and knows what I'm talking about, you might appreciate this. A lot of you guys won't know about this, but there is a two-part Voyager episode called Year of Hell, with a villain that reminded me a lot of the way they're handling Kang here, called Anorax, who actually has kind of a more interesting motivation than Kang does, who keeps changing the timeline and destroying entire civilizations by making it to where they were never there in the first place. So his justification is, well, they were never there. And in order to try to bring his wife back into the timeline. So he does a thing that accidentally erases his planet and his wife, and he can't get them back in the timeline. So he keeps like changing timelines, just trying to bring his planet back. And Kang is, I think they're gonna do maybe that kind of stuff with Kang. Okay. Except this guy didn't have that kind of like personal, like kind of family motivation. But it was still the same sort of thing where it's like, for the sake of the greater good, it doesn't matter how many timelines I wipe out.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's good stuff you can do with this character. I think this actor is game to like do everything he can. I've seen this actor. He's been rising up through the ranks the last several years, and what I've seen him in, he's quite good. He was really good. He's about to be in
Creed 3, so he's got two major movies a month apart.
Yeah, he was in Spike Lee's last movie, Da 5 Bloods, which he was quite good in. I like this guy, and I seem like I feel like I just want him to like, I want Kang to be cool, because A, I'm stuck with him for a while, and B, I do like this actor. I really hope I don't get tired of him. I hope that we can have really cool premises and cool time-related stuff like what you're talking about with, that. So
sadly, I'm just not excited about it yet. Like, I think he's good. I think he's one of the strengths of the film, but I'm not in anything like a Thanos plays.
I feel like critics and whatever, like, really hyped up Kang too much. I heard nothing but guys. movie might not be great, but Kang is so amazing.
Yeah.
And then I got to
he's
the movie.
all right. Like, the
I got to
performance is
the
good.
It's like you get to the movie and it's like just like Kang is coming, and it's like the movie is like you better get hyped up, and it's like yeah, he's fine. Like it's decent.
Like I said, I feel like they're trying to recreate what happened with Thanos in a manufactured way. And the one thing they're being smart about in giving us earlier stories with this character before we get to the big event film, like with Infinity War with Thanos, is at least they're going to be more consistent with this character, because they had not figured out what their Thanos was at all until they got to Infinity War. Even when you saw him in Guardians, that is not the same character as the one that you get in Infinity War. So I appreciate the consistency of it. And I also appreciate that you can have this villain in some, and again, I don't mean to contradict myself, in some not as consequential, I want this to feel more consequential than it is, but in some not as major event movies before you get to the big event with him. And we didn't really have that with Thanos, even though he appears, that one time in Guardians. You could have maybe done that where he was more in the background, but he had maybe more scenes than he did in Guardians, before you got to the huge event movie with him. Because I just don't want too many of these things to feel like events. I want to have some, like Austin suggested to me that it'd be really nice if we had just like a fun Avengers sort of adventure movie to establish a new team before we had to do the next huge broad scoping event thing.
Yeah. Honestly, that's what I like a lot about Age of Ultron, is you get to the first Avengers movie and it's like this big culmination. And then you get to Infinity War and it's an Endgame, and there are these big payoffs. And there is a lot of setup-y stuff. There is some like a payoff stuff in Age of Ultron, but by and large, Joss Whedon just wanted to make an Avengers movie where they fought Ultron, and that's kind of what it is. And it's kind of nice that it's not the big payoff to however many movies had been in between the last Avengers movie and that one. So
yeah, I mean, some people complain that movie's kind of self-important and all of that, but you're right, it doesn't feel like an event movie in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they all have to be.
No, they don't.
Well, anyway, Connor's ready to go to bed, it looks like, so we're going to go ahead and finish up here. But everybody, thanks so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the review. And Connor, thanks for sitting with me for a couple hours and talking about this. I always do this. I said I have nothing to say, and then we went for over 2 hours.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm not ready to go to bed. Maybe my throat is ready to not speak for the rest of the day. But what's coming up next?
Sorry, I was just kidding, because you had this look on your face like, I'm ready to never think about this film ever again.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about maybe buying this one day, and I'm like, I don't wanna.
I'm not gonna buy it right away. I'm not gonna spend full price on this movie. So we have a bunch to tackle next month, and I don't know how we're gonna work it all in. I don't even have a regular day right now for new movie reviews. I do new movie reviews so frequently, but February is a packed month, and I'm surprised by how much I actually want to cover next month, and stuff I have to. So we've got, I don't know what the very next thing is, but I know next month we've got Shazam. We'll have to do that because it's superhero. Creed 3, I'll definitely want to do because I love those movies. And I'm mixed on, losing Stallone and all that, but hopefully the movie's good. And then a movie that I didn't even know about until Friday that I am stoked to see now, the new Adam Driver movie, 65. Oh, we're doing 65. I'm stoked. No, there are 4 next month because also we've got John Wick 4.
Mm-hmm.
I bet at least a couple of those happen the same weekend, so we might have to do like a double feature thing.
Yeah, they're. I don't know. I know you've like on the Captain Logan show expressed some passing interest in like the Scream franchise. Maybe it's on Discord, but Scream 6 is next month too. And
yeah, I'll probably skip that.
Okay.
But there was a part, if we had nothing else going on, there was a part of me that wanted to finally binge, because I've never seen any of them, binge through the Fast and the Furious movies and do like a overview video
oh my God.
about that whole franchise. But then I'm not gonna have time because I think that's next month too.
No,
Fast 10.
I think it's April. I think that's April.
Okay, I don't think I've got time to do it, but
yeah. If you ever watched the Fast and Furious movies, I would just be here with a list of questions and be like, okay, what are your thoughts on this? Because
Do you want on for that one? Because I'll more consider doing it if I've got somebody to talk to.
I'll opt in for that if you're doing that.
And that doesn't mean that you have to do a recent watch if you don't want to. We could just have a conversation about it, but I would have to binge them because I've never seen them.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, no, I'll do it if you're doing it.
Okay, I'll talk to you later about that. That can happen. Once again, we don't mean to just announce things, but
look, I've been looking forward to you. For a guy who talks about superhero movies, I really want you to watch the evolution or degradation of that franchise, whichever way you look at it. It's insane.
I will definitely consider it.